Happy Monday. Welcome in. It's great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio, now on that FM dial, of course, at 95.7 FM as we get it rolling with our friend Ken Coleman. Of course, he's a Ramsey personality. You hear him here from 3 to 5 in the afternoons. And then, of course, his own show, The Ken Coleman Show. I saw he dropped a new episode this morning right before I got on the air. So there's a lot to get to here, Ken. Last week was a very big and busy week on the economic front. The unemployment rate rose unexpectedly, just a tick up. The jobs numbers came in below expectations for workers out there, for people getting up on a Monday. Maybe they've been thinking about changing their job. Should they start expediting that process? Do you see a softening coming?
Well, we see the softening. There's no question about it, Pete. We saw a lot less jobs added than expected. Certainly the unemployment number was affected by the union strikes that we're seeing. But yes, I think there is some softening, although the feckless Fed chair himself, Jerome Powell, said that they expect a soft landing. They're not predicting a recession. He didn't say it with a ton of confidence. I actually went back and watched it. So who knows what's going to happen? I'm not sure he knows. And so do I think that you need to be moving with urgency? No. Do I think that you need to always have a backup plan and have 2 or 3 options ready to go? Bolster those connections, be having coffees, be having lunches. Think about that extra side hustle that you always wanted to launch. I do think extra income is smart as we head into 2024. But, I would say that's always a good strategy no matter what. But I think where we're at, Pete, is what we talked about a couple weeks ago. I think it's really hard to say what's going to happen in 2024. And I think the Middle East situation is a big wild card.
Now, you mentioned the feckless Fed chair, as you have appropriately called him, Jerome Powell. He said he's not raising rates. They think they can pull off this soft landing, as we've been hearing about for the better part of 2 years now. But that also means I don't think we're getting out of this higher interest rate environment anytime soon, right? So all the day-to-day things that people think about, their credit card bills, their car loans, their mortgages, if you think you're going to wait this thing out, you're going to be waiting a while.
That's correct. I think that people need to get real comfortable with the fact that you and me and a lot of people who have got great interest rates are going to talk about it like it was this golden era, like old people talked about, and I think that we'll look back fondly on this unbelievable period where we had crazy low interest rates. Now, I will say this. There is a difference between the interest rates on your credit cards and your car loans and all that, and then your mortgage. And just keep an eye on the Treasury yields. And so, when we see those begin to drop, then you'll see mortgage rates follow. But when Treasury yields are high, meaning what the government's paying out for its own debt to people that are buying bonds, if you will, that always drives mortgage rates up. So do I think there'll be a little bit of a settling on mortgage rates? I would think so. I would look towards the second quarter, and you might see mortgage rates drop a bit. But as far as the current interest rate, no, I think we're going to stay here for a while.
Ken Coleman, he's a Ramsey personality. You hear him a lot of times on the station, 3 to 5 on the Ramsey Show. Of course, his own show is must listen to as well, The Ken Coleman Show. Check that out wherever you get your podcasts. Ken, I want to touch on something that you spoke to earlier, and that is side hustles. It feels like they're picking up across the country, and whether that's because people need their side hustles to make ends meet in this economy, or if it's because they're trying to find their passion, it's happening, right? And I feel like this is having a major impact on the economy and the job market at large, and we're going through a transitional period that we don't even realize is happening in front of our eyes. The 9 to 5, one job, 40 years feels like it's over. What do you see?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're exactly right. And I'll tell you who's driving this is the Gen Z. This is the youngest generation in the workforce now, and they are very entrepreneurial. Some fascinating data that's coming out on a pretty regular basis. I talk about it a lot on the Ken Coleman Show, but these kids are thinking they want to work for themselves because they love the idea of flexibility, the idea of a digital nomad. You can do your job from anywhere in the world. And so this is going to change the way we work forever because this new generation is going to start more businesses. I also think the other thing that's going on is people want to have more options. They just don't want to be stuck and get laid off like they saw in the pandemic. So I think a lot of people said, you know what, we're going to go for this. Now, here's what's interesting. 70% of Americans, Pete, want to work for themselves, but only 7% do. So there's a large gap between the people who go, gosh, that would be nice, and the people who say, I'm going for it. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity, though, in today's economy with the diversification. You just think about it. You can stand up a company today and start selling. Now, there's a big difference between standing it up and successfully keeping it going, but the bar is lower than ever to start a business. And I think for that reason, we're going to see more people dip their toe in the water. And I would tell you that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think the American economy was built on bootstrapping. And in a way, this is a new type of bootstrapping.
But it's going to be tough. I mean, you got all these corporations that are looking to hire. Many of them need to hire. And it's not just, like the old days, grab some resumes from the kids fresh out of school, because they may not want those jobs. They're not applying for those jobs.
That's exactly right. So what's going to be interesting is the globalization that we already have. Are we going to see a lot of white-collar jobs start to go overseas? And this isn't happening. It's not like this is a new idea, but will it happen en masse? I think that's something to be on the lookout for. Okay. And then there's this phenomenon, Pete, that's happening. I call it professional polygamy. And this is where people are holding down 2 full-time jobs, and neither company knows about it because they're working remote. And, the efficiency in companies today is so pathetic that a person could hold down 2 jobs and do them both in 40 to 50 hours is absurd, but it's happening, especially in technology.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'll share this with you, Ken, and you may know the story, you may not, but you got 2 teachers in Missouri, speaking of side hustles, who have gone viral in the last couple of weeks for going on OnlyFans as their side hustle, and they both got fired by the school district in Missouri. I mean, that's the kind of side hustle that morally a lot of us would say is questionable, but you're seeing teachers who are not making a ton of money, who have a lot of student loans to pay off, who are saying, I need a side hustle too, and they're going to OnlyFans, and that's creating a whole nother slew of issues in our economy and in our culture.
Oh, dude, I have seen those stories, and I thought to myself, what is going on in Missouri? But let's be clear here, okay? You've absolutely nailed it. They're not making a whole lot of money. They have a whole lot of debt. They have a ton of stress in the environment, and I'm not in any way validating their choices here. However, the only reason they're keeping their teacher job is because they don't want to have to explain to everybody why they're not working and what they're doing. And so these teacher jobs have become covers, if you will, so that they could take care of their own business in their own home. And it's another example of people going, I can no longer do the thing that I really wanted to do. And we see this in third world countries where moms and single mothers have to make horrible choices with their own body just to survive. I'm not equating the two in the severity of the circumstances, but the circumstances are the same. And again, because of our digital world, you can go on there and do silly things and scintillating things and get paid very well. And so no one's crying for those teachers anymore. They're probably thrilled that they got outed. Yeah. Shockingly.
Well, one of them was on this radio station last week, not this show, but said that she was making $42,000 a year as a teacher. She made $40,000 in her first week on OnlyFans. I mean,
isn't that
crazy?
Geez, that's so sad.
I know.
That's the only word I can come up with.
Yes.
But my goodness, that's the world we live in, and a extreme example of how the digital world and the ability for one person to sell something to the world, because the world is flat on the internet. I mean, it shows you the opportunity out there.
Mm-hmm. It does. Ken Coleman, his show, The Ken Coleman Show, part of the Ramsey Network. His new episode dropped today. I like the teaser. Easily create your own luck by doing this. So I will be listening when we get off the air, Ken. We appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Pete.
There you go. That is Ken Coleman. Does great work here. Always appreciate his time on KCMO 95.7 FM.